And one of the reasons why I like generational theory is that it predicted a lot of the things that we're experiencing now at the end of winter. It predicted them back in the 90s. And it's because these are the things that people experience at this time in the saculum. It just is. So we're at the tail end of winter. Well, tail end, we don't know necessarily.
How long is this tail?
How long the tail is going to be. And if these things were cut and dry, it would be approximately 2025 would be the very end of winter. But everything, I think it was Neil Strauss who said, or no, excuse me, not Neil Strauss. He unfortunately is, Neil Howe, excuse me, and William Strauss. It was Neil Howe who said, because our life cycles are getting longer and we're extending everything, we're extending young adulthood, we're extending middle age, everything is extending. He said that it's probably that the seasons are also going to dilate. So winter would have been over approximately 2025, but we'll see if it stretches into, much later than that, into like maybe 2030. But regardless, you can kind of feel like on an archetypal, energetic level that we're in a time period that feels like winter. It feels like a secular crisis. It feels like things are not, like we're at the batten down the hatches. We only have so much food. Like, don't share with anybody because we can't afford it. And it is not. It's the opposite of a time period of generosity.
And we say that as a metaphor, but there are people around the world right now that are experiencing that at the time of this recording in a very real way. Batten down the hatches. We don't have enough heat. We don't have enough food. We're in a scarcity mode and we're going to just get through, like very literally. So it can be a real challenge. This model speaks to me because it's like, man, this is very predictive, or at least it's descriptive. It feels predictive to me. I will mention too that a saculum, that 80-year span, roughly 80 years, that's roughly about the lifespan of a person.
Yeah.
Like one person's life, if they live into old age and die of natural causes, they usually live, if they're in relatively good health, to about 80-ish years old, give or take. Probably 10 years around that.
Yeah, it's a good life. 80 years is even still now is a pretty good life.
Yeah, and that's the average life expectancy-ish. I mean, I don't know if it's the average, but that's kind of the expected average life expectancy of somebody that lives a relatively healthy life.
I do want to mention that as we're talking about the saculum and these different seasons, one of the things that I've really appreciated about learning about generational theory is knowing that this fourth time period, they actually call each of these seasons a turning. So the spring is the first turning, summer is the second turning, fall or autumn is a third turning, and winter is a fourth turning. And in fact, that's the name of their book, The Fourth Turning, because that's the time period that they were predicting when they wrote the book in the 90s. It's the time period that we are really experiencing the sort of the pressure of right now, because we're at the end of this fourth turning. And knowing that we've been here before, right? Like, this is not something that's new to us. We've experienced these fourth turnings cyclically for who knows how long. The book Generations, which is the first book that they wrote, traces these turnings back to the 1500s. So this is something that we've not just experienced over the last couple hundred years. We've experienced them who knows how many times. And so we just need to get through it. We've gotten through it before. We've gotten through winter or a fourth turning before. It's always a horrible time period. It's a time period of scarcity. It's a time period of xenophobia. It's a time period of not feeling like anything's going to be okay. It's a time period that, quote unquote, ends in total war. Like, it's not fun times.
Yeah.
And we can get to the other side of it. So even if you don't understand anything about the generations themselves and the archetypal energies of the generations themselves, just looking at this idea of a saculum, of a time period, of an age, and seeing these patterns that we go through a high, and then we go through a spiritual awakening from that high, and then we go through an unraveling from the spiritual awakening, and then we go through a secular crisis from the unraveling, and then we get through the secular crisis and we get back into a high. Just knowing that that's kind of a cycle of humans and human culture, that helped me a lot. It helped me go, you're right. You're right. This is a spiral. This is a situation that's cyclical.
Yeah.
And unless we hit a big red button that says, nuke all humans, we're going to get through it and we're going to be okay on the other side.